purposes of eliminating inadvertent background noise. Members are responsible for muting and unmuting themselves. If I notice that you have not unmuted yourself, I will ask if you would like the staff to unmute you. If you indicate approval by nodding, staff will unmute your microphone. I remind all members and witnesses that the 5-minute clock still applies. If there is a technology issue, we will move to the next member until the issue is resolved, and you will retain the balance of your time. You will notice a clock on your screen that will show how much time is remaining. At 1 minute remaining, the clock will turn to yellow. At 30 seconds remaining, I will gently tap the gavel to remind members that their timing is almost expired. When your time has expired, the clock will turn red and I will begin to recognize the next member. In terms of the speaking order, we will begin with the chair and ranking member. Then members present at the time the hearing is called to order will be recognized in order of seniority. And finally, members not present at the time the hearing is called to order. Finally, House rules require me to remind you that we have set up an email address to which members can send anything they wish to submit in writing at any of our hearings or markups. That email address has been provided in advance to your staff. With that, I would like to acknowledge Congressman Andy Harris, who is stepping in today for Ranking Member Cole, who is currently engaged with the Rules Committee. So I want to thank Congressman Harris and all of my colleagues for joining this morning. As we celebrate Community College Month, it is especially important for us to recognize how community colleges foster an educated populace and a highly skilled workforce, and how they make college more affordable and more accessible for more Americans. Not everyone needs a 4-year degree, but everyone does need the education necessary to find good-paying jobs that provide economic security for themselves and their families. And compared to traditional 4-year colleges, community colleges provide a more cost-effective approach to education. Community colleges educate 41% of all undergraduate students in this nation, and their student body is often more diverse, providing pathways to opportunity for traditionally underserved communities. Nationally, 27% of community college students identify as Hispanic, 13% identify as African Americans, 6% identify as Asian Pacific Islanders. 57% of community college students are women, while 15% of community college students are single parents, and 29% are first-generation students. Community colleges serve a broad array of students when considering age as well. The average age of community college students is 28, including 36% between the ages of 22 and 39, and 8% over the age of 40. The majority of community college students also work while pursuing their credentials, and 33% receive Pell Grants. While federal funding makes up only 11% of community college revenue, these institutions rely on the programs and funding under the Labor H Bill, Pell Grants, work study, Perkins CTE, adult education, apprenticeship programs, workforce innovation, and Opportunity Act grants, and the list goes on. From 2011 through 2014, we invested a total of $2 billion in community colleges through the Trade Adjustment Assistance and Community College and Career Training Grant Program, or TACT. These programs help community colleges successfully partner with expanding economic sectors in their region to ensure a skilled workforce for high-growth local and regional industries. The investments go a long way, since community college education is drastically less expensive than a degree from a 4-year college. And nationally, the average annual tuition and fees at community colleges during the 2021 academic year was just $3,770, and generally anyone can enroll. By contrast, the average annual tuition and fees for a 4-year public college was $10,560, and the annual tuition and fees for a 4-year private college was $37,650. price tags that are usually accompanied by often strict enrollment requirements. In my home state of Connecticut, for example, the average in-state community college tuition is approximately $5,300 per year, compared to the $13,000 it costs per year for public four-year college and the almost $27,000 it costs a year for a private four-year college in Connecticut. In my district around New Haven, we have three community colleges: Gateway in New Haven, from which Dr. Brown joins us this morning, Middlesex in Middletown, Connecticut, and Naugatuck Valley in Waterbury. I have worked extensively with all three colleges for years and have held my annual Congressional Arts Competition at Gateway for the past few. I have seen firsthand the wonderful impact these institutions have on the lives and future of those that they serve. And I know that as a nation, we owe it to our students to provide what President Lyndon Johnson once described as, and I quote, the only valid passport out of poverty. That is why I've made it one of my top priorities in the Congress to fight for our nation's community college, get them the robust funding and federal support that they need. In fiscal year 2016, we worked to establish the Apprenticeship Grants Program, which helps connect businesses to workers with the skills necessary to fill jobs in a variety of industries. I'm proud to lead the subcommittee's efforts to create the Strengthening Community College Training Grant Program to support workforce development at community colleges. We started the program 2 years ago, expanded it last year to $45 million, an increase of $5 million above its initial year funding level. But despite the success of these and other programs, the COVID-19 pandemic has had a devastating impact on our nation's community colleges and the students that they serve. Most students who attend community college do not have reliable computer equipment of their own or access to the internet. Students often rely on the college's computer labs to access a technology, which made telecommuting or working remotely all but impossible in many cases. Moreover, many community college students who are working their way through college either lost their jobs, had their hours or incomes reduced, or found themselves working on the front lines of the pandemic, putting themselves, their families, and their fellow students at risk. Already, existing challenges like food insecurity, inadequate access to transportation, a dearth of mental health services have only been further exacerbated by the pandemic and have often hit those who attend community colleges the hardest. Since the beginning of this pandemic, enrollment in community colleges has declined by 10% in the fall of 2020, and early estimates for 2021, the 2021 spring term indicate enrollments will decline by another 9.5%. This decrease in enrollment has been much more pronounced for community colleges than other higher education institutions. This is all the more reason why community colleges need our help. We need to provide more than just increased funding. We must drill down into where exactly is the greatest need, work to identify programs, practices, and solutions that need the most support. This includes working to foster better partnerships between community colleges and businesses in emerging businesses, and providing more resources to greatly expand and increase the registered apprenticeship program. This means more coordination between federal programs and grants with these institutions and providing more wraparound services that are needed by so many of our non-traditional students. Finally, it means supporting students in navigating various post-secondary programs and credentials. The Biden administration has proposed making historic investments in our nation's community colleges to provide cost-effective job training to workers dislocated by the COVID-19 pandemic, and to equip future students with technical and occupational skills to succeed in what is an evolving labor market. So as we write the fiscal year 2022 appropriations bill, we must take stock of the strengths and the challenges of our community colleges and the potential they have to help develop our nation's workforce and revitalize our economy in the wake of the pandemic. We need to invest in these institutions, build the architecture of the future at the federal as well as local levels. Our community colleges are the backbone of our education system. It is crucial that we provide them with, and their students, with the funding and the resources needed to build a brighter and a more prosperous future for all Americans. And with that, let me recognize Congressman Andy Harris for his opening remarks. Congressman Harris.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the subcommittee, and our testifying witnesses. I look forward to our hearing today discussing the important role played by community colleges. The United States holds over $1.5 trillion in student debt, with over 40 million borrowers. Students are graduating with tens of thousands of dollars of debt, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars of debt. We know this model is not serving students well. Community colleges can serve as an affordable, accessible alternative to a four-year institution. Community colleges can save students anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 or more each year in comparison to traditional four-year universities. Several states also offer additional funding to make the cost of enrolling in community colleges extremely low, opening a door to higher education for many who would otherwise have been unable to participate. Community colleges were some of the first schools to offer enrollment options around a full-time working schedule, attracting new students and opening options to higher education to those who couldn't enroll in daytime classes. Roughly 60% of all American community college students, in fact, study part-time. In addition, the curricula at community colleges are designed for non-traditional students. These schools have been leaders in meeting students where they are and designing an education that fits the needs of the non-traditional student who may be a parent or someone who needs to work full-time but wants to increase their skills for more job opportunities. Community colleges have proven they can adapt to a changing environment, meeting students where they are, working with local businesses to develop programs that lead to good-paying, sustainable jobs. As the cost of higher education skyrockets and the value of some four-year college degrees decline, community colleges can prove to be an affordable alternative path to enhanced employment, particularly in fields in constant demand for more workers, like cybersecurity, technology, and advanced manufacturing. In fact, two of my local community colleges in Cecil and Harford counties in my district just announced an innovative alliance with other community colleges statewide that would allow students to earn their associate degree or certificate by completing coursework uniquely offered by another partnering community college. The participating Alliance College indicates how their shared resources and expertise can help to generate cost savings that are passed on to students. By creating this pathway for students to easily move among colleges, they decrease the need to run specialized, costly, and sometimes low-enrolled programs at several locations. In Maryland, as across the nation, community colleges are not just degree-seeking, but also play a vital role in occupational training and certificate programs. In my state, they provide training to over 100,000 students annually for occupational licensure and certificate training. In fact, of the over 500,000 Marylanders that attend a Maryland community college, 70% of them are in continuing education or workforce development courses. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today on this topic and want to thank you, Madam Chair, for holding yet another very important hearing. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank you very, very much. And so it gives me great pleasure now to really to introduce our witnesses, and delighted to welcome Dr. Walter Bumphus, President and CEO of the American Association of Community Colleges, Dr. Mary Alice McCarthy, Director, Center on Education and Labor from New America, Dr. William T. Brown, the Chief Executive Officer of Gateway Community College. And if you'll just bear with me for a moment, I just would like to say, and I'm so excited to have Dr. Brown here. He is, Gateway is in the heart of downtown New Haven, Connecticut. and Dr. Brown has served as a research laboratory director, part-time, full-time college faculty member, an elementary school counselor, consultant to schools, school districts, nonprofit organizations regarding issues of diversity, psychological health, and academic engagement and success. So I'm so grateful to have your continued support, Dr. Brown, in helping to foster strong relationships between our community colleges and the federal government. So thank you for being here with us today. And also would like to introduce Ms. Kelly Jordan, Director, IBM Career Skills and Performance. Let me remind the witnesses that the entirety of their written testimony will be entered into the record. And I would now like to recognize for 5 minutes, Dr. Bumpus, you are now recognized. And thank you very, very much for all the work that you have done, and appreciate the strong relationships that we have had over the years in achieving your goal and achieving what is our goal with the subcommittee on behalf of community colleges. Dr. Bumpus.
Good morning, Chairwoman DeLauro and Ranking Member Harris and members of the subcommittee. I am Walter G. Bumpus, President and CEO of the American Association of Community Colleges, which represents the nation's 1,044 community colleges. I am indeed honored to be with you this morning to discuss community colleges and the federal government's essential role in supporting them and their students. I have had the privilege to serve as a community college leader through some very trying times, including leading the Louisiana Community and Technical College system during Hurricane Katrina. Never in recent history, or in my 40+ years in higher education, has the country faced such a collective reckoning like the one that came with the COVID-19 pandemic. Almost everything changed. What did not change was the resolve, ingenuity, and commitment of our nation's community colleges to continue to provide a pathway to a better life for millions of Americans. Community colleges enroll nearly 11 million students each year and promise access to educational opportunities. Many of our students are the same Americans most harshly impacted by the pandemic. Higher education is a pathway to a better life, better communities, and a better country. Our community colleges strive to level the playing field for all Americans to achieve their educational goals and stand ready to continue their role as catalysts for growing the nation's workforce pipeline. Community colleges provide access to traditional higher education and the necessary skills training that allows students to enter the workforce, many of whom are then able to earn a family-sustaining wage. These pathways to education and to jobs were deeply impacted by the pandemic. As you know, our community college enrollment was impacted as well. Enrollments declined 10 percentage points this fall from the previous year. These numbers mean that more than 500,000 people are no longer pursuing higher education. It is disturbing to note that the declines were concentrated in Black and Latino male populations. Colleges are working to identify and engage students that did not enroll in college or stopped attending during the pandemic and get them back on track to graduate. But there is a silver lining in the COVID cloud as the pandemic has accelerated the transformation of academic programs and services to ensure that students are well served in our ever-expanding digital world. Fortunately, the Higher Education Relief Fund has provided a lifeline to students and colleges trying to weather the pandemic. Our students and leaders cannot thank Congress enough for this support. Colleges are busily strategically developing and implementing HERF spending plans. The Department of Education also deserves kudos for HERF guidelines that provide and promote maximum flexibility. Community colleges have an ongoing partnership with the federal government to foster equity and excellence in education. I'll highlight some of the most critical investments. Others are in my written statement. First and foremost is the Pell Grant. AACC staff worked side by side with Senator Pell to develop the program in 1972, and we support sustained increases to this maximum grant. Roughly 1/3 of all community college students receive a Pell Grant each year. With relatively low tuition, increases in the maximum Pell Grant generally cover non-tuition expenses that plague our neediest students and hinder completion. Enhanced Pell Grant funding would address some of the food and housing insecurity, child care costs, and technology needs facing community college students and enable them to work less, borrow less, and focus more on their studies. The Strengthening Community College Training Program is a model for effective federal support of community college job training. The program requires close collaboration with business, but allows grantees to prioritize regional needs. This program mirrors the extremely successful TAC program. In 2020, the program received approximately 150 applications and was only able to fund 11. AACC is thankful for the $45 million appropriation in 2021, but we strongly urge the subcommittee to bring the SCCTG program to scale. Community colleges are enthusiastic about President Biden's proposed $12 billion for community college infrastructure and the American Jobs Plan. The increased sophistication of technical education requires continuous, large-scale capital investments. We estimate immediate infrastructure needs to be around $60 billion. The Strengthening Institution Program helps low-resource colleges that serve percentages of needy students. Madam Chairwoman, we want to thank you especially for your support of SCCT this morning. So thank you very much this morning.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I'd now like to recognize Dr. McCarthy. You're recognized for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Chair DeLauro and Ranking Member Cole and Congressman Harris. And thank you to all the members of the committee for the opportunity to speak with you today on this important topic of the need to invest in our country's community colleges. My name is Dr. Mary Alice McCarthy, and I direct the Center on Education and Labor at New America, a nonpartisan public policy think tank in Washington, D.C. As Dr. Bumpus noted, and others have as well, the effects of the pandemic recession have not been evenly distributed. Low-wage workers, workers without a college degree, Black and Latinx workers have borne the brunt of layoffs and reduced wages from this recession. And in striking contrast to previous recessions, this recession has led millions of students to either drop out of college or delay their plans to enroll, both of which could have lasting repercussions on their and our long-term economic prospects. Dropout rates have been highest among our most economically vulnerable students, including first generation, low income, Black and Hispanic, and adult students, all of whom make up a large share of community college enrollments. Now, community colleges are accustomed to being on the front line of recessions, and this time is no different. At the Center on Education and Labor, we have been conducting extensive research on community colleges on how they can support an equitable economic recovery and what we can learn from the last recession and how community colleges were part of that recovery. In 2019, we published a meta-analysis of the last large-scale direct investment in community colleges, which has already been mentioned, the Trade Adjustment Assistance College Career Training Grant Program, also referred to as TACT, which was designed to build the capacity of community colleges to serve adult learners and workers displaced by the Great Recession. Through our analysis of outcomes data reported in the grant evaluations, we found that students who participated in TAC-funded programs were significantly more likely to complete their programs and earn a credential than comparison students, and more importantly, or most importantly, had better employment and earnings outcomes than comparison students. So that's all a way of saying that by investing in the capacity of community colleges to serve the students and workers most affected by the recession, that generated positive outcomes for those students and workers. And that is why we believe that timing is right for another large-scale capacity building investment in community colleges. But it's not enough to just repeat what we did the last time. We need to build on what we learned and craft an even better investment that meets the specific challenges of this moment to get students back into school and to create pathways to economic security. In my written testimony, I outlined 4 evidence-based interventions that colleges could implement that we believe would have a significant impact on student success, both in college and in the labor market. Specifically, a large-scale investment could help colleges expand student support services. We already know that providing a suite of student support services, from advising to emergency cash assistance, can make all the difference for students making it to the finish line. That's likely to be especially true in the near future as families recover from the pandemic. Colleges will need help developing and upgrading these services. A large-scale investment could help colleges build more industry partnerships or sectoral partnerships, which have already been mentioned. Thank you, Chair DeLauro, and which have already been highlighted in the Strengthening Community College Training Grant investments. This is an evidence-based practice that comes out of the workforce development world and is highly effective for tightly linking skills training programs with good jobs. But it's expensive. It's expensive to get started, I should say. There are significant startup costs. Colleges need help with those startup costs. Also, apprenticeship has already come up. Investment in community colleges could help us significantly expand access to apprenticeship. It is the gold standard when it comes to connecting work and learning, and it also could make college significantly more affordable. Expanding apprenticeship into industries like information technology, healthcare, and business services is possible. Community colleges are the right institution to do this, but again, there are high startup costs and they will need resources to do it. And then finally, I think we all know that colleges have a real need to improve online learning. It's hard to imagine a time when colleges were better positioned to make good investments in technology to support online learning. It's been a year of sort of a crash course in how to deliver high quality online learning. Enabling colleges to build on what has worked and perhaps replace what hasn't would be a very good way to put all those hard-learned lessons of the last year to use. I think it's worth noting, and I will leave you with one last request, which is that we're very concerned about students who won't go back to school because they need to work. We have a federal work study program that we believe we're under leveraging. We think we could add money to the federal work study program specifically dedicated to community college students, an extra formula within that. I'm happy to talk more about that in the question and answer period. And again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your testimony. I'd now like to recognize Dr. Brown. You are recognized for 5 minutes.
Representative Andy Harris, and to all the members serving on this subcommittee of the House Committee on Appropriations. Thank you for this opportunity to testify before you today. I am Dr. William Brown, and I serve as the Chief Executive Officer for Gateway Community College, headquartered in the heart of downtown New Haven, Connecticut. Gateway is the largest community college in Connecticut and home to over 90 associate degree and certificate programs and dozens more workforce and continuing education programs. This academic year, more than 8,600 students enrolled in credit courses at Gateway, and more than 600 students enrolled in our non-credit workforce programs. Gateway's student body is diverse. The majority of our students are African American and Hispanic Latinx, and Gateway has been designated as a Hispanic serving institution since 2018. More than 40% of our students are 25 years of age or older. Most of our students are challenged economically. Almost 6 in 10 students receive some form of financial aid, and 45% are eligible for Pell Grants. Almost 7 in 10 of our students attend Gateway part-time. Our students are attending college full-time when they can, part-time when they must, while facing many life challenges that too often get in the way of them attending and completing college, including unemployment, underemployment, food insecurity, lack of reliable transportation, inadequate childcare, the digital divide, and unmet needs for healthcare and mental health services. The fact is that the COVID pandemic has aggravated every single one of our students' challenges and laid bare all of their vulnerabilities. Over the last several years, Gateway has extended its supports for our students by directly providing wraparound services, and these programs have been extremely successful in helping them succeed in their programs. I am especially gratified with how employers, community partners, and private philanthropy, from Yale University and Yale New Haven Health to our own Gateway Community College Foundation, have rallied around and partnered with Gateway to provide critical supports and services for our students. Despite all the challenges, our students have powerful stories of resilience and dedication, and I detail some of those in my written testimony. And their successes are a testament to what can be accomplished when ambition, hard work, and unrelenting perseverance meet with a challenging educational environment and a supportive community. Honorable representatives, we truly appreciate your support to Gateway and to our students. Her funding has enabled us to keep our campus safe, preserved our courses and services, and provided critical financial support to our students during this devastating pandemic. We have used funding from the Child Care Access Means Parents in School, the campus grant, to expand childcare available at Gateway into the evening. Gateway is receiving funding through the Strengthening Community Colleges Training Grant, enabling us to develop and expand critical healthcare programs and train the workforce that will assist with our region's recovery from the pandemic. We encourage you to continue making the investments necessary to support our students, to expand your support for established programs like Pell, Gear Up, Trio, and Perkins, and to seize the promise of newer programs like the Strengthening Community Colleges Training Grant. Any and all funding, policies, and regulations that support students and their families caring for and educating themselves, meeting childcare, healthcare, and transportation needs, will have a tremendous impact on their prospects for a brighter future. Representative DeLauro has been a longtime champion for Gateway, and she and members of the Connecticut delegation regularly visit our beautiful campus. Gateway is always happy to host any member of this committee, and we invite you to come and see our work firsthand and how your investments have impacted our amazing students. If you come, we will also offer you the opportunity to support small business and enjoy some of our legendary New Haven pizza. On behalf of Gateway Community College and community colleges across the nation, thank you again for this opportunity to address you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Brown. I would very much like to get the committee to New Haven to see Gateway and to enjoy, really, which is the very best pizza in the entire country, so bar none. So thank you very much. Ms. Jordan, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chair DeLauro, Ranking Member Cole, Congressman Harris, and distinguished members. My name is Kelly Jordan, and I am IBM's Director of Career, Skills, and Performance. I manage talent programs at IBM that empower IBMers to build skills and have fulfilling careers. I'm honored to speak today at this hearing on the essential role of community colleges. IBM knows that quality education on in-demand skills opens doors to good jobs and better pay. Today, education in career-aligned skills is not sufficiently available to meet the needs of businesses or job-seeking Americans. Additional, more accessible skills pathways, such as those offered by community colleges, are key to helping more people, particularly those in underserved communities, get on course for better jobs. As this committee explores increasing investment in U.S. community colleges, I offer 3 suggestions for ensuring that those investments help our country build back a more equitable economy. First, expand job-related skills education in high school through community college partnerships. Fostering partnerships between community colleges and high schools can help students build relevant skills early while preparing them to easily transition to a career or further education immediately upon graduation, all while minimizing costs to students. IBM has experienced the power of these partnerships firsthand. 10 years ago, IBM launched Pathways in Technology Early College High Schools, PTECH, a 21st century approach to high school career education. It combines traditional high school courses with a no-cost associate's degree, hands-on professional mentoring, and a real workplace experience. PTECH has proven so successful that it has expanded to 162 PTECH schools in the US, including Connecticut, Maryland, Texas, and California, among others. Increasing funding through existing authorizations to promote more PTECH-style partnerships between community colleges and high schools would expand the acquisition of in-demand skills, promote a more inclusive workforce, and reduce barriers to well-paying careers. Second, make skills education more widely available at all stages of life. Collaboration with community colleges has been the foundation for many IBM initiatives to prepare students and workers for new-collar jobs, where in-demand skills matter more than a specific degree. In 2017, IBM launched our new-collar apprenticeship program, focused on fast-growing fields such as cybersecurity, cloud computing, and more. This Earn While You Learn program includes robust learning content coupled with hands-on experience and was so successful that it grew twice as fast as expected in the first year. As IBM has testified previously, funding for apprenticeships is shockingly low for a pathway that can be an economic game changer for both students and mid-career professionals. Funding for U.S. Department of Labor apprenticeships should be increased, and community colleges should play a central role in these programs nationwide. Third, improve the infrastructure for sharing credentials. Today, there is simply no good or easy way for job seekers to share their skills and credentials with prospective employers. Establishing a national skills infrastructure would streamline the process by which students and workers share verified skills, certifications, and degrees. It would also empower learners to align their skills with in-demand jobs. IBM has joined with other institutions to pilot a skills exchange infrastructure that utilizes blockchain technology to protect individual privacy and ensure that a job seeker or student retains full control over their personal information. This pilot is a first step, but greater support for technical infrastructure is required to create a learning and employment credentials exchange that is accessible to all Americans. The Appropriations Committee should include resources for educational institutions and workforce boards to join this exchange. At IBM, we believe this era of technology must be an inclusive one. This can only happen if more people can acquire the skills needed for the jobs that are made possible by breakthrough innovations like AI and quantum computing. Community colleges have proven through their flexibility, reach, and willingness to partner in innovative ways that they can be catalysts for more inclusive approaches to skills and education. We applaud the committee for focusing on the vital role of these invaluable institutions, and I thank you again for the opportunity to testify. I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so much. I'm thankful all of our witnesses for their testimony. And if I may, just before I begin my own questions, it is really rewarding to listen to the four of you who have, so much experience in this area of community colleges and the partnerships that are critical to really increasing educational opportunity. And what struck me again, which has in several of our other hearings, is this year is the consistency of message, if you will, from all of you, which is the essential role that community colleges play, their strength, the pandemic effects, the need for serious investment, the need to create the business partnerships. And so we're going to look forward to all of you being able to provide us with recommendations as we move forward with the appropriations process. So thank you all very, very much. Let me ask my first question to Dr. Brown. Dr. Brown, earlier this year, the Department of Labor awarded the first round of grants under the Strengthening Community College Training Grant Program. Gateway received a grant under this program in partnership with other local community colleges. One of the goals is to support those partnerships between community colleges and expanding economic sectors in the region. Now, my question is, what type of education and training programs and resulting careers will be available as a result of this grant? Who are your partners? How did you choose the healthcare industry as a focal point for your grant? Dr. Brown, can you unmute?
I apologize for that.
Okay.
So with regards to the careers that are available, we have designed our program, which is entitled CT SHIP, Connecticut Statewide Healthcare Industries Pathways, so that students who are interested in programs of CNA, Certified Nursing Assistant, patient care technician, medical office assistant, those kinds of programs, medical coding, that they would be able to be trained in those programs. And what's nice about those is that they are also set up to lead to other programs, other jobs in healthcare. So, for example, we're also using the grant to support a central sterile processing program, and those kinds of programs can lead to surgical tech and beyond. So those are some of the programs that would be supported by the grant. In terms of partners, as you mentioned, we are partnered with Norwalk Community College, Housatonic Community College in Bridgeport, Middlesex Community College, and Tunxas Community College in Connecticut. And along with our fellow community colleges, the Connecticut Department of Labor, the Department of Economic and Community Development, our workforce development boards are all working with us. And the employers that we are partnered with include Yale New Haven Health, Hartford Healthcare, Norwalk Hospital, and Stamford Health. So we have a very broad partnership with business and industry, with the state, as with with the federal government. How do we choose healthcare? The focus of the grant is on displaced workers, workers who've been displaced by the COVID pandemic. We're also very, very interested in addressing disparities in post-secondary training and with healthcare, we were already, as a state, like many other places, suffering from a shortage of healthcare workers. The pandemic has aggravated that entire situation. And so this is really investing in, it would be nice to say the workforce for tomorrow, but we're really talking about the workforce for today. There's such a need for healthcare workers at all different levels that it just made sense to invest in those particular areas.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let me ask if I can, Dr. McCarthy, Dr. Bumfus, this is about the TACT program. You said it was, Dr. McCarthy, you said it was successful in helping students finish a program, earn a credential, secure employment. As we continue to grow the Strengthening Community Colleges training program, which is a successor, how can we make the program more effective? And I'm going to ask Dr. Bumfus, because my time is going to run out here. In your testimony, you talk about the overwhelming response from the colleges to the Strengthening Community Colleges training grant. I'm going to ask Dr. McCarthy for recommendations and then ask you, Dr. Bumfus, if you have any additional recommendations as how do we maximize the partnerships between the colleges and high growth economic sectors.
Thank you, Chair DeLauro. I would have 3 recommendations for building on strengthening the community college training grant program, which is an excellent investment and has also sort of built on previous lessons. What I would say is that I think the program, given the situation that we're in, needs to be much larger. It's just there needs to be more resources out there. The TACT program was $2 billion, and I don't even think that came close enough to the kind of and it touched almost every state, and it touched a large share of community colleges, and that's what we need as we're moving out of the pandemic. Is every community college in the country needs some capacity building dollars, and this would be a good vehicle for doing that. The other 2 things I would add to the community college career training grant program is would be to include a role for the state, set aside for the state agencies. One of our findings in our research of the TACT grants was that there were a lot of really exciting innovations that never got lifted up, that could have been sustained and scaled through state policies. Colorado did this with the TACT innovations around developmental education that the community colleges developed, but we didn't see that in any other states. It's a real missed opportunity. Our community colleges are often boutiques or islands of innovation and excellence. This investment should be a way, the states could be a way to get out of that. And then similarly, we'd like to see a more sort of structured cross-agency collaboration between the Departments of Education and Labor. These programs are about helping community college students move from college into the labor market successfully. The Labor Department knows all about the transitions into the workforce. The Department of Education has lots of expertise on things like student support services and pedagogy. There's not enough information sharing, so we recommend standing up an office, staffing it, allowing it to deliver technical assistance. One last point on the importance of bringing states into the equation too is that a lot of times the evaluators of these programs in TACT had a hard time getting a hold of good data. If the state were involved as a mandatory partner in these grants, we believe that the colleges would have an easier time getting a hold of better data, and that in turn would create stronger evaluations. Thank you.
Dr. Bumpus, I'm going to apologize to you. My time has run out. My hope is that you might be able to add on in one of your answers, or if I can come back to that. So my apologies to you. And with that, let me yield to Congressman Harris.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the panelists today. With regards, I just want to comment because Mr. Brown, I know you mentioned the importance of health training. Coming out of the COVID pandemic, the demographics combined with what we learned from the COVID pandemic, and I'm afraid some of the diminution in the health workforce following the COVID pandemic means that institutions like our community colleges, which I think are excellently situated to train a lot of our needed healthcare workforce, physician assistants, nurses, at many, many levels. Community colleges can do a great job, and I think that is one of the things that we should emphasize in community colleges. But I want to ask all of you, or any of you who care to answer, we're learning a lot about doing things online. We're doing something online right now. We're all better at it than we were a year ago, hopefully. And I think that that what we're learning from online education is there are some students who do very well online. There's some who don't do well, but there's some who do very well. And that it can be an incredibly efficient way to deliver education. What is the role, or what are community colleges doing to go to this new paradigm of learning that I think will be with us, just like telemedicine will be with us for healthcare? I think online learning is going to be with us for a while. Again, it doesn't work for everyone, but for some students and some subjects, it's probably very well suited. What is the role of community colleges in that? And I'd open it up to any of the panelists who want to answer.
If I might, I'll go ahead and take the first stab at this. So, what we've learned is that online can be very, very powerful for helping students to engage with college. And particularly, we mentioned some of the life issues for students, transportation and childcare. What online can offer to students who are dealing with a lot of life issues is a measure of convenience and not more than convenience, but a way to really engage with the college and navigate through some of these transportation issues, for example, would be a prime one. So for some students, it really makes a whole lot of sense. What we've seen at Gateway is that a number of our younger students, the ones coming right out of high school, they've been out of school in some way, shape, or form during the last year, that we're really going to have to work to engage them. And so we're considering very seriously making a number of our courses on ground for them, because we really want to link them up with the college and meet people and get to know us, and that engagement will help support them through their college careers. So I think that looking at our students and listening to them and figuring out what makes the most sense for them given their situations really is the way to go. The other thing that I would add for online education is that there are a number of models. There are hybrid models. There are all different kinds of ways to deliver online education. And so looking at those and refining those and making them the best that they can be at the end of the day will do nothing but good things for our students.
If I could join, Congressman Harris, in terms of responding to your question. First of all, I think it was a great question, and you're absolutely correct. That is going to be the way of the future. But what's happened, I think it's only exacerbated the problem of the digital divide. We're finding that many of our students just aren't able to participate. And for me, what's most concerning is I think when you start to look at the lost learning that has occurred over the last year plus, some of our students have fallen even further behind. You've heard the stories about, and I think Chairwoman DeLauro spelled some of these things out in her opening statement, but we've had lots of our students that have had to go to parking lots to get a hotspot to access their learning opportunities, their research opportunities. And so for us, we've got lots of our colleges that are investing in digital equipment for their students to learn. But what I become increasingly concerned about are those colleges that cannot afford to do this. And in that respect, a lot of our colleges are having students that are falling further behind. The one thing I would, and I have suggested this in meetings I've had with college presidents, my question is always, what are you doing in regards to professional development? Not all faculty members are, well, most faculty members are great teachers, but not all of them are adept at teaching online. As you well know, effective teaching online is more than putting a camera in a classroom. And I've heard stories of a lot of our students who are embarrassed by their family circumstances, don't want a camera in their living room, dining room, if they're able to have one, and some of those limitations.
Well, thank you. Yield back.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to yield to Congresswoman Roybal Allard, and what I'm going to do is to recognize Congressman Roybal Allard and hand the gavel while I just move quickly to the Interior Committee to see this new Secretary of the Interior and be able to welcome her and ask a question, and then I will be back. And with that, let me relinquish the gavel to Congress and recognize Congresswoman Lucille Roybal Allard.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to all the panelists for being here. I know just how valuable community colleges are, particularly representing one of the poorest minority districts in the country. Also, as having been a single parent, I also know how critical childcare is and how stressful and difficult it can be to find quality, affordable childcare. Dr. Abumpas, you wrote that 58% of community college students are women, and the average student age is 28, and many are single mothers. According to the Institute of Women's Policy Research, just 28% of single mothers graduate with a degree or certificate within 6 years of enrollment, and another 55% leave school before earning a college credential. In your statement, you say that the C Campus program needs more congressional commitment. Can you elaborate a little bit on how it works? And is it just a commitment of dollars, or are there other kinds of support or changes that are needed to the program to make it more accessible and less burdensome?
Thank you very much for that question, Congresswoman. Bottom line for me is that the resources are so important, and it's just not dollars, but we've got to provide at each one of our colleges more opportunities for apprenticeships, work and learn opportunities for these students. Our female students, and it's particularly special to me. I've got 2 daughters and I have 6 sisters. And I've had both daughters go through college, and I know the challenges that they've had. I've watched my sisters go through college and the challenges that they've had. And each one of our institutions talk about the many challenges. And sometimes the challenges for our female students are greater than our male students because many of them are working mothers, and we're trying to provide the child care necessary for them. But the mentoring opportunities would be something I would add to the program. And certainly monies to support food and housing and security if that were an issue for them.
Okay. Dr. Brown, just as a follow-up, my understanding is that Gateway Community College is a recipient of the C Campus grant. Can Can you elaborate a little bit on the program? How many parents at your college request childcare, and how many actually are able to receive it, and what impact it has on those that don't receive it?
Sure. So Gateway Community College has an early childhood education program, academic program, as well as a laboratory school. We have 3 classrooms and they hold up to 20, so approximately 60 young people are able to take advantage of the services there. I don't know. I can find out how many people ask for it, but I can guarantee you that whatever we are doing, it is not enough. There are still way too many students that we have that need childcare. And, you know, we have partnerships in the community, and there really is I would say, a community-wide recognition of the need for appropriate and adequate childcare. You know, it has effect not just for the young people themselves, but for their families and certainly for their parents who are trying to complete school. So I am happy to get more information on our program for you. But I can tell you now that it's not enough. What I'll add, if you don't mind, is that in addition to the childcare program that we have here, and we used our campus grant to extend those hours for the laboratory school into the evening. We also have a program called the Family Economic Security Program, the FES program, that works with a number of our female students, helps them to navigate the college, connects them with resources and services in the community, provides coaching, and a number of other things. And what we're finding is that when we provide those supports, that those students are remarkably successful. The retention rate for those students is something like 65%, and these are some of the most vulnerable students we have. And so in addition to childcare, there are a number of other things that we are looking to do and to provide for not only young mothers, but also some of our single dads. We do have those as well, to facilitate their success in college by helping support them in terms of navigating their circumstances.
Okay. I see my time is up. Mr. Fleischman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning to all of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and to the distinguished witness panel. I've really enjoyed your discussion. I'm really excited about this because in my home state, the great state of Tennessee, we are already there. And it's truly incredible with what we've done with the Tennessee Promise. In our state, we afford all high school graduates with the opportunity to attend a community or technical college free of tuition and mandatory fees through the Tennessee Promise. This is a last dollar scholarship program that allows students to attend any of Tennessee's 13 community colleges or 27 colleges of applied technology. And as my colleagues know, I am a big fan of applied technology education. While the Tennessee Promise is available to all graduating seniors, regardless of socioeconomic standing, counselors across the state work to target at-risk students who might not pursue a secondary education. My first question is for Dr. McCarthy. You mentioned in your written testimony that community colleges are uniquely well positioned to address the economic fallout from the recession. How has COVID impacted the need for specialized skills? And how will prioritizing high-demand, high-quality credentials help stabilize the workforce? And how can we better incentivize community and technical enrollment?
Thank you very much, Congressman Fleischman, for the excellent question, and I share your enthusiasm for the Tennessee Promise program. Yes, I believe that the COVID pandemic is having important impacts on our labor market that will translate into changes in the nature of jobs and changes in the skills that are going to be most in demand. We are going to, I think there's little question that the pandemic has accelerated automation trends in certain sectors. And so there are certain types of jobs that we may not see come back. So we are going to be dealing with how to help workers, for example, toll booth operators and some workers in the retail and hospitality sector are going to need to reskill. I think there's little question that there's going to be a real need for programs that are specifically designed, similar to the Great Recession, for adult learners, people who have been out in the workforce for a while. The Tennessee Reconnect program is a good example of a program that's thinking about not just young people. I'm going to talk a little bit about high school students, but we really do need to think a lot about the displaced workers. The workers who've been hardest hit by this pandemic are workers without a college degree. These sometimes are workers who are very wary of going back to school, or maybe didn't have a great experience in post-secondary education. So we have learned a lot over the last decade about ways to help adults sort of get used to college. Again, that gets back to that whole support services. But the other key is that we have to make sure we need to have a job strategy that goes along with this skills strategy. And that's where, again, these sectoral partnerships and thinking broadly, not just about how community colleges can train people, but how they can be part of a set of partnerships that actually create jobs and make sure that those transitions are good transitions that lead to good jobs. And I will second the notion too, though, that high school students too are going to, it's critically important that they be aware of the changing nature of skills. And in this case, we never want to be too specialized. I think, there's always that mix between very specific skills, but also making sure that young people have the kind of broad-based and skills that they make them resilient and capable of engaging in lifelong learning. So I think we need a set of, we need different strategies depending on where people are in their working life journey and where they are in their educational journey. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Bumpus, how can community and technical colleges partner with industries or employers to meet the demands of the local economy, sir?
Thank you very much for that excellent question, Congressman Fleischman. And I want to also congratulate you and the wonderful folks in Tennessee for that excellent Tennessee Promise program. I've had opportunities to meet with former Governor Haslam and Randy Boyd and others down there, as we've used them as a model from our office about what can be done and done statewide. Now, back to your question, I think what needs to happen more than anything else, and it's something that we feel like routinely is being done, but it's not, and that's the communication between our governmental entities and some of the business leaders in our community to talk about what needs to happen in the workforce side of the house. And in my opinion, those are some things that would enhance the program. I think Mary Alice spoke to that. I think we've got to develop a companion piece of maybe some job action with what's happening in terms of the studies that are happening in Tennessee and in other places. The academic programs are excellent in regards to how they're being structured, but maybe not enough emphasis being put on the workforce training needs.
Well, thank you, Doctor. And my time has expired. But before I yield back, Madam Chair, I do want to say the impact on the lives of not only high school students, but also older students who are now being given a second chance is truly inspiring. So thank you to each and every one of you all for your great work. And I'll yield back.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Clark.
Thank you so much, and thank you for this wonderful hearing, and I appreciate all the witnesses coming forward today. I want to follow up on questions started by my colleague, Congresswoman Roybal Allard, and go back to C Campus for a moment. And specifically, I'd like to ask you, Dr. Bumpus, about the fact that Congress has tripled C Campus funding from 15 to 50 million, but we are still serving less than 1% of those who could benefit from this program. Can you speak a little bit about the importance of this program, and also that in at least 30 states, the average yearly cost of childcare surpasses that of in-state tuition, and what it means to parents who are balancing both childcare and community college tuition?
Excellent question, Congresswoman Clark, and I really wish I had an answer for you that would maybe address totally, I think, some of the challenges we're having. First and foremost, I want to say that AACC supports this program, and we've been vocal advocates for this program. But you're correct, we haven't had the kind of participation that any of us would like to see at this point, and yet we still hear about the needs of many of our students in regards to childcare. We've got so many parent learners, we've got so many working parents, and we would think that this would be a natural, but it just hasn't been that way. What we've called for from our offices is continued meetings of community college leaders trying to connect the dots between what we're hearing from, I guess, the ground regarding the needs for childcare and what we're seeing happening with these applications for this particular program. I personally feel it's an excellent program and would recommend it highly to community college presidents. I've got a daughter that's a community college president, very proud of her, and she and I have talked about some of the challenges of childcare and being able to connect, especially in some of our poorest communities, these kinds of resources that are out there. But I'm afraid I don't have an honest answer I could give you in terms of what would be a silver bullet. I will say to you, and as I prepared for these hearings, I've been able to also identify that there are some needs that are not being met, and yet there are some resources out there. And I like to say that most community college presidents I know can smell a dollar a mile away. If there are resources, they will find them. But yet this is one particular resource that we haven't been able to fully utilize. And I'll promise you this today, we're going to look into it and see what we can do to get more activity in this regard.
Well, thank you for that. Thank you for your honesty around that. And, you know, these are complicated issues, but you have spoken so passionately and eloquently about the combination of needing to meet this pandemic, which we know has had a devastating effect on women in our economy and especially women of color. And so I am interested in how we can support not only the C Campus program, but how can we support creating incentives for workforce development in early childhood education, which community colleges play a critical role. I have a bill that proposes some student repayment if you stay in the early childhood field, but I'm interested in ideas you have and how we can support this workforce.
Is that question for me?
Yeah, or anybody.
Okay, I had a child care program at Brookhaven College when I was president there some 20 years ago that was world class. And it was world class because we hired such an outstanding faculty that were prepared to teach students no matter where they came from. The problem was the pay was so low when they finished the program.
Right.
And the one thing we didn't want to do is have a student spend their good money, their federal money to attend the program that would give them less than what I call family sustaining wages. Or another way, have them graduate and then still almost be able to qualify to be in a poverty line. So we've got to come up with a way that we can present opportunities for students when they finish these child care programs to be in a status that they will have more resources to support their lifestyle and what they're doing and still get them through the best programs. I hate to say it, but probably more pay would be helpful.
I don't think you should hate to say it. That's the key. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Ms. Herrera Butler.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask about childcare, if anybody can take care of my child, but that has already been asked.
Send her over, Jamie.
This one, she's my third. I'm not going to send this, but the first two. Okay. In my district, career and technical education is vital to meeting the workforce needs. I think, Ms. Jordan, you were talking a little bit about that. And I wanted to see if you could speak to best practices for developing partnerships with our community colleges and employers in response to each local community's needs. Because that's one of the things I've observed with my community colleges is, they're so specific to that community. And that's not to say you don't want to prepare young people for whatever, or older people. I was an older person when I went to community college, and I loved my community college education. But we want to make sure that they're responding to what the needs are in that community and preparing people. And I've seen really, really awesome partnerships there. But then I've also seen that there needs to be more. So I was hoping you could maybe speak to that.
Hi, Mommy.
Absolutely. For us, it really starts with that dialogue, engaging with the community college to really help to understand what are the skills needed by a company in that area, and having that commitment between the community college and the company to talk about how the company can give back, looking at a syllabus, providing subject matter experts to be a guest speaker in a class, providing pathways to employment. So for us, that could mean internships or apprenticeships as part of our program. Our P-Tech program, I think, is also a really fantastic example of that. Industry partnership is key. And so it helps students to transition from high school into that dual enrollment associate's degree program, and it brings industry into the classroom. We start with mentorship in grade 9. They're getting exposure to learning about what it means to work at that particular industry partner. And those industry partners are local to that school. So it's really relevant to what they might be hiring when those students graduate, which makes it really easy for them to transition after 4 years, 5 years, or 6 years, however long it may take them to complete both that high school and associate's degree, into employment, hopefully at that company or in another company in the area.
I think that you know, to that point, one of the other things I've seen, I think Congressman Fleischman was talking about this, is the early partnership. So we always think about community college as a 2-year degree, you know, you're at a certain point, but in Washington State, we have pathways for high school students. And so you can do both the dual associate's degree along with finishing your diploma. And this dope was like, no, why would I want to leave, you know, my senior year and be off campus, which I look back and I'm like, well, perhaps maybe paying, you know, free first 2 years of college and saving that time versus paying for it at a 4-year institution. And so I think marrying that community college time with industry, you know, just access, just seeing like, oh, is that something I want to go into is really critical. I'm a huge fan of our community colleges. I think they're such a flexible, tough key to making sure that our workforce will continue to evolve in the way that it should. They're nimble, and they do, if we can make sure there's childcare, they make sure that that nothing gets old and stale. Like they're always having to revamp. Whoever it was that I think who said, you know, they know how to squeeze a dollar. I love that about you guys. So I'm looking forward to hearing and supporting your request as we move forward in this committee. So I'll mute myself and yield back. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Let me say thank you to my colleague, Lucille Roybal-Allard, for, taking over in my absence. And with that, let me recognize Congresswoman Frankel.
Good morning. How is everybody? Thank you to our guest today. I wanted to tell you something that first, our Ava Parker, who is our very able leader of our community college in Palm Beach County, they call them now state colleges, but it is similar to it is a community type college. Here's what she told us. Enrollment has climbed 13% in the fall and 15% for the spring. Many students don't have laptops or internet, so they can't do remote learning. And many students worked, and when the jobs were cut, they had to stop school. Faculty are concerned about returning to school as some students refuse vaccines. The state cut the budget and vetoed the funding for an online library system. 4-year colleges are accepting less transfers from community colleges. They've had to decrease class size because of social distancing and not enough rooms for all classes on campus. So I'm assuming that's a common issue across the country. My first question is in regards, and whoever wants to answer this, is AACC undertaking any efforts to improve the transfer process for students particularly disadvantaged students. So when they want to transfer from a community college to, I guess, to one of their state schools or another, what we call a university or college, and are additional federal resources needed?
Representative Frankel, I'll take that question if you don't mind. I would say first and foremost, your state of Florida probably has the best system of transfer in the country.
Yes.
You all, and by the way, your president is outstanding. She's on my board, and I get a chance to work closely with her on a lot of different things. But despite some progress, transfer remains problematic in many places, and that's due to a variety of things. In some states, it's a policy issue. In other states, there are not enough folks in the universities that are communicating with community colleges, and AACC initiated what we're calling an equity in transfer project about 6 months ago that's getting rave reviews. We are addressing states where the equity issues are becoming clear regarding those students that are students of color being able to transfer and have their credits accepted on par with white students. And that's happening, and we've got some policy things we're working on at a lot of different levels. So the equity and transfer initiative is one thing I would speak to that's occurring, that's bringing more transfer programs in line, and we're seeing increased numbers already. We're working closely with ASCU, the Association of Colleges and Universities, and APLU, the land grant universities in the country. And so that relationship has really started to be executed, and we're starting to see increased progress just in terms of the relationships between our college presidents and our university presidents.
For that. This may be a sort of a simpleton question, but I'm just, can you explain why it's so much more expensive, or I should say less expensive, to go to a community college than a regular college? I don't know what to call regular, but a college or a university.
I get that question a lot, surprisingly. And I don't want to speak to the expenses of a university, but in all likelihood, some of those expenses revolve around the cost of the faculty. You know, we focus on teaching in our colleges, not a lot of research necessarily, but excellent teaching. We focus on hiring faculty members that want to teach, that want to work with students. And I have to say, my comments are based not just on my experience working in community colleges, but I worked at the University of Texas at Austin, where I was a fully tenured professor and in fact was chair of the department. And when it comes to hiring faculty members who are researchers, those expenses become a little bit more significant. And so that's a part of the increased cost. But also you are talking about a student that perhaps will maybe want to attend a football game on Saturday, and some other things that are associated with university life, of which we all perhaps participated and greatly enjoyed. But those expenses become a little bit more expensive for a student to matriculate than probably the nuts and bolts for a community college.
Thank you. Yield back, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Congressman Klein.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for holding this hearing. Community colleges are invaluable to the localities and students they serve to educate and prepare them to enter the workforce. They provide more flexible education and skilled opportunities at affordable costs. They work to ensure that students of all ages are able to succeed in completing their education by providing options that work for those with families dependent on them or those who are balancing current employment. And their pathways to completion and employment are effective and provide opportunities for profitable careers. In my home state of Virginia, we are blessed to have many wonderful institutions of higher education. Community colleges play a large role in providing those opportunities for Virginians, and I have 3 different community colleges that serve the students of the 6th Congressional District. We have programs like Fast Forward Virginia that work with community colleges to provide job training in essential fields that are completed in a matter of weeks, not years. And with this program, trainees are responsible for 1/3 of the cost, and the participating colleges are held accountable to provide training by only receiving the remainder of the funds once the student completes the program. These programs are designed to meet the needs of local employers, and some have guaranteed interview agreements with the local businesses after completion. This type of training provides an affordable education and skilled learning that gives the students the opportunity to get into the workforce sooner. Look forward to continuing to work with community colleges in Virginia to provide innovative opportunities like Fast Forward to students. And I'm thankful for those dedicated to teaching and educating the future generation in my home district. Let me go ahead and throw it out there to anyone who might want to answer. Community colleges offer education opportunities to many students who are caring for a family. And with the K-12 school closures, particularly in the state of Virginia, being as strict as they were or have been, I'd like to know how this impacted community college students who are now having to step into a new role of assisting with remote education for their children. And did it impact enrollment numbers? And did any other closures across the country impact students at community colleges?
Congressman Klein, I'll try that question if you don't mind. Certainly, we've heard from a lot of our students who did not return that trying to make sure that they were caring, in some cases, for a multi-generational home, if you will. Their students attending K-12 and having to work with them on virtual learning, they themselves in a virtual learning classroom, that it was probably more than they could take. A lot of students, as you know, pivoted rapidly in March of 20, going from in-person classes that they were doing very well with to having to go to school virtually with no option. That was what they had to do. And in many cases, they did it. They didn't really complain much, I guess, but they, bottom line, did it. But when it was time for them to return in the fall, we had some students saying to us, not so much for them for that fall, and then again for the spring. Another challenge that we've heard folks talking about has been, I talked about that digital divide. I won't keep talking about that. In fact, I did a presentation recently for some group, and I got introduced as Walter Broadband Bumpus. They said, we know you're going to talk about broadband and the challenges. I said, well, look, I won't say much about it, but I will say this, you know. But the other side of the coin has been, you're exactly right, that has been a challenge. When you're trying to navigate Zoom for the first time in your life, and you really aren't familiar with technology, that can be a major challenge. And then you double that with, you know, trying to deal with your students' lessons and they're not prepared to be a teacher. That's another challenge. So.
Thank you very much. You know, I've heard from some community colleges in my home district and in Virginia that instead of supporting a doubling of Pell, they support expanding it to be permitted for use for shorter term training programs like the one I described earlier. What other initiatives can make classes and programs provided by community colleges more accessible to students?
I'll try that one and then let my colleagues add on. You know, the short-term Pell, if you ask most community college presidents, that will be their top priority, more so than doubling Pell. Now, certainly an enhanced Pell award would make it easier for our students to afford some more in wraparound services, if you will. And so I won't continue to elaborate on that. I see our red light on. And so with that, I'm going to say thank you so much for your question. You got a great system of colleges in Virginia, sir.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Congresswoman Bustos.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. I had something really, really awesome happen yesterday, which was the First Lady came to visit one of the community colleges that serves the congressional district that I represent, Sauk Valley Community College. Also with her was the Secretary of Education. And it leads to what I'm really curious about and what I'm hoping, maybe Dr. McCarthy, I'm going to address this to you, but if anybody else would like to chime in. But one of the labs that we all visited together, along with our governor of Illinois, J.B. Pritzker, was a lab for nurses. And we met this 64-year-old nurse who had been an LPN and was going back to community college so she could get her RN degree. And as we were talking with her, I thought, this is what we need more of. People to maybe advance their degrees in some line of healthcare, or to people to go into this line of work, because the congressional district that I serve is 14 counties, covers the entire northwestern corner of the state of Illinois. But 9 of the counties are provider shortage areas. All right, so 9 of the 14 counties are short on dental care, as well as mental health. 11 of the 14 counties are short on primary care providers. So it's clear to me, especially after this visit by the First Lady, that community college can play an incredible role in providing nursing, people coming out of the nursing programs, dental hygienists, and other degrees. So Dr. McCarthy, why don't I address this to you, but what role should community colleges have in fighting healthcare provider shortages that we're seeing all over this country, especially in rural areas like the one I represent? And probably part 2 of that question is, what more can Congress do to support community college to help address those shortages?
Congresswoman Bustos, thank you for that excellent question. And yes, I couldn't agree more. Community colleges do need to be on the front line of sort of replenishing our healthcare workforce and creating opportunities too for our frontline and essential healthcare workers that have been working so hard and who need that next step in their career. So I would say community colleges are really the workhorse of the healthcare workforce development. They are the primary source of our nursing workforce, and then also all of our frontline healthcare workers. So again, I think targeted investment to help colleges meet this need would be very helpful. Also, targeted investments that include some sort of opportunities to create more partnerships with nursing homes, hospital systems, other kind of clinical settings, because one of the major obstacles for a lot of these colleges in expanding these programs is access to clinical opportunities. So we need to think more about how do we get more clinical opportunities available to community college students, and what sort of incentives and how can we structure an investment that gets those providers of clinical spaces to open those up a little bit more. I'll just say 2 more things quickly. One of the other big challenges that we have is that community colleges also provide a lot of training for our very first step into healthcare jobs. Those are certified nursing assistants and some of the patient technical assistants, patient techs, and farm techs that we've been hearing about. But a lot of students, those jobs, as we've been talking about, pay so little that a lot of students have a difficult time doing just what the person you talked about, the LPN, going back for their RN. So we need to do something about the wages and the of those frontline certified nursing assistants, home health aides, and other sort of frontline healthcare workers who just make too little and are in a lot of economic uncertainty because of it. And then the last thing I'll say too is that what we've been seeing, we've been doing a lot of research on community colleges that take their students all the way to the bachelor's degree. Both the state of Florida and the state of Washington community colleges there do that quite a bit. And that's been a big driver of increasing the share of respiratory therapists, registered nurses at the bachelor degree level, and other healthcare workers. So, I mean, I think thinking about how can we free community colleges up, particularly in rural areas, to bring their healthcare workers from the entry level all the way to the bachelor's degree is something we need to focus on more. Thank you.
Very, very good. Thank you, Dr. McCarthy. I've only got about a half a minute left, so rather than ask a follow-up question that will take a little bit too long, I will yield back the remainder of my time. And again, Madam Chair, thank you very much for hosting this hearing today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Congressman Watson-Coleman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you to each of the witnesses. You all have been a fountain of information. I am a huge fan of county colleges because I think the county colleges meet so many different diverse needs, and I get to our very diverse and populations. So here from me, I just need to know what you need in order to be able to do the things that are important in our communities. I'm very interested in this issue of new collar positions that Ms. Jordan spoke about. I'd like to know more about that because I think that that's something that transitions people from high school to to college, to workable programs, to good paying jobs. So if you would just elaborate on what these new collar positions include.
Absolutely. For us, new collar can really include most jobs that exist. Anything that requires a skill, but not necessarily a traditional degree. So that could include jobs in healthcare. It could include jobs in technology. For us, we have really looked heavily at technology roles, and that's why we created our apprenticeship program to focus on cybersecurity developers, software developers, designers, data scientists, building those skills from within. Our P-TECH dual enrollment program as well is another great example. We do have many graduates of that program that choose to transition on to higher education, but allowing those students to earn both their high school degree and that associate's degree at no cost becomes a fantastic bridge into employment immediately upon graduation in many cases. So
how do you all pay for that? Does IBM underwrite the cost of that?
P-TECH is funded through dual enrollment programs in the different states. So it is funded through the state for the community college degree. Industry partners provide mentorship, job opportunities, internships, and in many cases, job opportunities upon graduation like IBM does.
Okay. I invite you all to the state of New Jersey. We've got a very robust county college system, and I represent at least 4 of them. And I've worked with all of them in every one of the 21 counties. When I was a trustee for the 4-year colleges, and my husband was a trustee for the 2-year colleges. So, you know, we're very much supporters of both the 4-year state colleges and the county colleges. I also like the idea of county colleges having the programs available for students who are in high school. I even wish that we could get to them at even an earlier age so they could understand what opportunities exist, how that English course is important, how that math course is important, how that science course relates to the next level in their lives. I am very interested in seeing that the Pell Grants are increased. And Dr. Bumpus, you said that if you had a choice, you would want to see an increase in the short-term Pell programs as opposed to just an increase in Pell Grants. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? What are the short-term Pell Grant uses? I'm not sure I followed you, but I got kind of sidetracked out of the committee hearing. So
I'll elaborate if you'd like. Yeah,
I would. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question, Congresswoman Watson-Coleman. Specifically speaking, Pell Grant eligibility requires you to be taking a certain number of courses and credit hours, and you might have to enroll for 9 credits when a student really can go and take a 3-credit course or a 6-credit course and still have a certificate that would allow him or her to do whatever program they're being trained to do. Right now, the Pell Grant, so my comment was not an either or. I would like to see both and, if you will, but would allow those students who want to just come for a short period of time. And oftentimes, these are students who have already earned a degree. Something like 15 to 17% of students in community colleges already have a baccalaureate or a master's degree and are simply wanting to return to get their qualifications and certification to get a job, you know, as quickly as they possibly can. And so that was the point I was making. Certainly, the Pell Grant would open up many more resources for a student.
I appreciate that because I think there's a whole bunch of retooling that's necessary now, and we find that they're very valuable jobs that 4-year college graduates, even master's graduates, don't necessarily qualify for, but some specific education in the field that they're interested in is very viable, very important, and we should think about doing what we can to support it. In New Jersey, we have a lot of articulation and agreements between county colleges and state colleges, and there are some state county colleges where you can get your 4-year degree right on the county college campus, even though it's with the relationship with another 4-year college. So there are just so many opportunities that exist on that level, and I, for one, am a supporter of county colleges, and whatever we need, I would like to be able to support. I'm also a supporter of the TRIO programs, because getting to those first generation, those underserved communities, and those young people that don't have the kind of confidence, courage, or even the kind of support that they need in their home life, letting them know that there are options for them is so vitally important. I thank you so much for today's hearing. And Madam Chair, I yield back my time.
Thank you very, very much. Congressman Harder.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Chair DeLauro, for hosting this hearing on a very important topic. And thank you to the witnesses for contributing their testimonies. As a former instructor at Modesto Junior College, I've seen firsthand the positive impact that community colleges can have in transforming lives. And in my district, only about 17% of adults actually end up with a 4-year bachelor's degree. 83% don't. And so community colleges and the opportunity they offer are incredibly critical to folks that I represent. Knowing the value of apprenticeship opportunities, I introduced a trades and career education package, a skills package, last Congress, which focused on addressing different needs within the career and trades education space, including giving students more opportunities for career education in community colleges and throughout the life cycle of their educational journey. It breaks my heart when I meet with employers who say they're having trouble filling high-paying jobs with local students. And then right afterwards, sometimes within a matter of hours, I'll meet with community college students who are looking to graduate and are scared that they won't be able to find a job in our community. And that lack of matching strikes me as a real failure and something that we can do much better on. Ms. Jordan, I was very interested in reading your testimony about the work that IBM is doing with community colleges. I believe in business and community college collaboration to build skills-based programs. And I think there are far too few of these programs across the country. What do you think limits this type of collaboration, and what can the public sector and this committee do to better incentivize that the type of programs that we're talking about today are the norm and not the exception?
I think in many cases, some of it is an awareness challenge. When we first started developing our apprenticeship program, there weren't a lot of apprenticeships in the technology industry. They were very historically limited to trades roles. And so we started from scratch building our program. And it was very successful. As I mentioned, it grew twice as fast as expected. And in the 3.5 years since it's existed, we've had over 500 apprentices enter our program. But we regularly heard from others who were interested in doing the same and did not know where to start. And so in 2019, we teamed up with the Consumer Technology Association to launch the CTA Apprenticeship Coalition, where we essentially open sourced all of our frameworks, playbooks, and guidance to help other companies start their own apprenticeship program. So what took us roughly 6 months from conception through DOL registration, other companies have been able to do in a period as short as 2 to 4 weeks, leveraging all of the materials that we have shared with them. We also share those frameworks and guidance with members of the Business Roundtable, Aspen Institute, through many of our partnerships. We've also worked with the California Department of Technology, who recently adopted our apprenticeship framework to launch their own apprenticeships. And so we have seen really a groundswell there, helping other companies to adopt these types of programs. There is the need for replicable models on the community college side as well. For schools to then understand what is required for an apprenticeship and ensure that we're able to deliver the curriculum if that's the type of partnership that the company would seek. Programs like the Learning Credential Network that I spoke about as well are also valuable. That type of infrastructure would actually provide job seekers with the transparency around how their validated skills can match to open and in-demand roles. So infrastructure will play a key role in helping those job seekers find opportunities.
Terrific. Thank you. It feels like there's just so much interest from the community college side, from the employer side, from the student side, and yet these programs are altogether too rare. Dr. Muffis, would love to hear from you in sort of our final minute. From the community college side, what do you believe is limiting the proliferation of programs like the ones we're talking about today?
Oftentimes, and I know this is going to sound basic, the only limitation I've seen is when there's not appropriate communication between that business member that you said that you ran into and that college president. I have found that there's little that can't be accomplished when you have the business community and college presidents chatting and coming together. I've been a college president off and on between being a university professor and the job I'm in now over the last 30 years, sir. And I found that each and every time I've sat down with a corporate or a business CEO, there was never anything we couldn't really work out as we started chatting about it at our level. And if there was a need for us to develop a program, oftentimes corporate leaders say, hey, look, we'll build it, or we'll provide support for the expensive equipment. And when you can do that, get your faculty involved, sir, not much you can't accomplish.
Terrific. Well, thank you so much. And I see my time is up. With that, I yield back to the chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congresswoman Lee.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you to our witnesses. This is such an important hearing, and I really appreciate you, Madam Chair, for holding this, and also with our witnesses today. I come from California, and community colleges are really the primary means for Black and Latino students to gain education, a skill, job training, whatever community colleges provide. Community colleges are it. And so I just want to thank you and salute you and just say how supportive I am of this. We have in California, unfortunately, the end of affirmative action in the 90s. So primarily students of color, especially Black and Latino students, they don't get admitted to the University of California. In my alma mater, UC Berkeley, maybe between 2% and 4% are students of color. And the highest number of students from any state going to HBCUs are from California because of the barriers to higher education in California. And so having said that, I wanted to drill down a little bit on minority serving institutions. We have no HBCUs west of the Mississippi. So we have PBIs through community colleges and Hispanic serving institutions. Want to find out, do you know where they are? Because some PBIs don't even know that they're eligible to be a PBI, and what type of benefits are there for becoming a minority serving institution or PBI? And then secondly, Mr. Fleischman and I work on additional funding every year for computer science for all for our young K through 12 Black and Black Latino girls of color, low-income girls in public schools. So how can community colleges work with our public schools to get some of these resources out of what we appropriate every year for technology education? Mr. Bumpus, I guess I would start with you, and thank you all again so much for being here.
Congresswoman Lee, thank you so much for your always great support for our community colleges. We really appreciate that. But to your question, first of all, I don't know if you're aware, but there are a lot of community colleges that are MSIs, HSIs, and PBIs, and we proudly make that statement. But what we can do more of is perhaps have them jointly do programs for our students. And I want to back up for a minute and just say, community colleges greatly support our MSIs and PBIs, and I work very closely with Leslie Baskerville and a number of the folks that lead those programs. But we believe that if we can get more of our students attending some of those PBIs and MSIs, that we have a better transfer relationship as well. We have great relationships, but they need to be improved. We don't have enough of our students looking at our HBCUs as options, and we have started to do more in that regard.
Let me just mention one thing really quickly.
Yes, ma'am.
A lot of our students don't know that community colleges have that designation as minority serving institutions or PBIs.
You know what's really sad? Some of the colleges didn't realize they had that distinction. I think that was your point earlier. I was at a college recently in New Jersey, and they got information that I believe was something like 24-25% of their students had to be from a Hispanic background to qualify as a Hispanic serving institution. They had the largest celebration I think I'd ever seen just because of that designation. I think you're going to find more of our two-year colleges looking at that because of where the resources are. I made a statement earlier in my testimony today that college presidents can generally smell money, and where there's money, they will try to find a way to address programs to access some of those resources. These are some outstanding programs that are available through these particular programs, and regretfully, not enough of our colleges have taken advantage of that. We need to do more. I agree.
Well, Madam Chair, and Dr. Rumpelson, and to all of our witnesses in this space, I'd like to figure out a way we can follow up with you, because I know just in California, for example, in my community colleges, they do not have that information. They do not know what federal funds are available as PBIs or minority serving institutions for them to go after. And so we've got to figure out how to communicate that to them.
I'll make a commitment to you here today. Eloy Oakley is a great friend of mine, the chancellor of the system out there, and we've got several of your college presidents who serve on my board. I'm going to make this a priority for just me personally to communicate with Eloy and those presidents, and we will follow up with you and we'll get something done on this.
Thank you again, because the only, I'm telling you, community colleges for Black and Latino students are it in terms of higher education in California. And so I will do anything I can do to help support and grow those resources for the education of our young people who really have many barriers to the universities in California. Thank you.
That's sad but true, but I'll commit to get back to you on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. What I want to do now is, if we can keep ourselves, I would like to deal with a kind of a second round, but a lightning round here. If we can do this in 2 minutes each, and then wrap it up. So, I know several people are still here. So let's just go very, very quickly. And I don't know anyone, Dr. Bumpus, I get to you, but anybody else can jump in or you can get back to me. We fund formula grants, Perkins, CTE, adult education, WIOA. We do competitive grants, apprenticeships, the Strengthening Community Colleges Training Grant, etc. What are the most effective federal levers for supporting community colleges? Where should we go? I'd like to get your answer, and if I could quickly get others.
I would perhaps start with the Pell Grants because of what they do. But in regards to programs, we have worked with the labor in regards to the apprenticeship grants. They are so important. Perkins, I can't say enough about. And TRIO programs. Those are the grants that I'm probably most familiar with as a practitioner. My very first job at a college was working in TRIO, and I'm so intimately familiar with all the nuances of all the TRIO grants and the difference that they make. So I would cite those as being.
Okay, let me ask anyone else, please jump in. I've got a minute and 2 seconds. Let's go.
From our perspective, anything that could help to fund pathways to employment, so the apprenticeship grants or funding to support the expansion of PTech programs would be critical for us.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else?
I would say directly. Oh, go ahead. I'll go last.
Okay.
Okay, very quickly, I would just say, again, we need investments that help community colleges build their capacity. So it's important that we fund the student aid programs. Pell Grant is absolutely critical, but we also have to have dollars that go to build the capacity of the colleges, either through competitive grants, Perkins, WIOA, and of course the adult ed and the investments in apprenticeship, but it's capacity plus student aid.
Okay, and Dr. Brown.
Last but not least, all of those programs, particularly the ones that sort of are directed to community colleges, are all absolutely necessary. Pell, TRIO, and so on. But I would also encourage not to forget the kinds of funding and supports that are going to help students outside, because again, the barriers that our students face to completing are connected with family and childcare and so on.
the supportive services. Thank you. Let me yield to the Congressman Harris.
Thank you very much. And I'd just like to give Ms. Jordan McCarthy an opportunity to follow up on my question before, which is that community colleges can be at the forefront of figuring out how this new paradigm of adult education, of online learning, can exist going into the future. What do the community colleges need in order to refine this technique? Again, looking to the future as this becomes the way adults will learn.
Access to a tool like a Learning Credential Network is certainly one thing to focus on. Infrastructure needs. There has been a lot of conversation about the supportive services. We believe online education is absolutely a huge play as well. Many IBMers are very regularly learning online. But for many learners, they don't have access to secure internet or even to laptops. And so as we think about the proliferation here, infrastructure services will also be really critical.
And thank you, Congressman Harris, and I would agree with all of those. And I would just add into, I think there needs to be more resources for community colleges to collaborate. It was mentioned earlier about community colleges sort of going in together on equipment purchases, things like simulators, and some of these things can be very big capital investments. Enabling colleges to sort of go in on those together and develop shared use programs is something that we've been seeing over this last year, and that's been very effective. And then again, also just dollars to buy the necessary infrastructure, equipment, and software needed, and to do the professional development that Dr. Bumpus has mentioned many times is so important for the faculty and the support service staff to be effective using these new technologies.
Congressman Harris, if I could add one more thing, and I didn't speak about the importance of infrastructure. I can't say enough about that, but we haven't talked much this morning about our small and rural colleges. Such needs there. Everything we've said to date this morning has been perhaps magnified in terms of a need in our small and rural colleges.
And I would only add professional development, as several of us has mentioned, but also programs like apprenticeships that really help our students to both work and learn at the same time.
Thank you. I yield back.
Yes. Congresswoman Roybal Allard.
Okay, I'd like to raise two issues very, very quickly. Dr. McCarthy, according to the Child Welfare League in America, 11% of students at two-year institutions are experiencing homelessness due to the pandemic, while up to 30% of two-year institutions offer on-campus housing. Many students still find themselves with no access to housing, food, or broadband access. Where should this subcommittee focus to help community colleges address this issue? And secondly, my second question would be is that, and you partially answered this when you were responding to Ms. Bustos, in your written statement, you say that one of the barriers to expanding apprenticeships into industries beyond construction is that career entry and advancement in high growth fields like health, which you talked about earlier, but also you include business services, information technology, manufacturing require college degrees, which only institutions of higher education can deliver. Can you also give some additional examples of what you would consider targeted investments? Because you mentioned that they need to be targeted. So if you could answer those two questions in the time I have, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Yes, I'll start with the last one, which is, again, I think we need targeted investments similar to targeted investments in helping community colleges build degree apprenticeship programs. Because yes, in career advancement in many fields, particularly in licensed professions and areas like healthcare, do require academic or credentials that only institutions of higher education can award. But colleges really do not know how to build these programs very well. They just don't have experience. And I think with some targeted investments on how can colleges build credit-bearing apprenticeship programs with industry that culminate in a degree would help move the field forward. And then in terms of your first question around how to help the many students who are that need access to many more benefits, housing, food. Again, I think we need some targeted investments around that specific issue of how colleges can work with their local health and human service agencies, community-based organizations, come up with some models that allowed for them to be able to reach the students who need them and sort of deal with their housing and food insecurity needs and childcare needs. But it requires partnerships. The community colleges cannot do this on their own. And that's one of the biggest challenges, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay. Congressman Klein.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank Dr. Bumpus for recognizing the importance of rural institutions as well. Most of my district's rural, and the 5 community colleges that go across the whole district definitely are responding to the need to serve rural students. One of the ways that we're serving, that these colleges are serving students in our areas through dual enrollment. These opportunities give high school students a great opportunity to start earning college credits that will allow them to graduate early. And I spoke with President Blosser from Lord Fairfax Community College and Dr. Downey from Blue Ridge Community College about dual enrollment opportunities that they offer and ways to help ensure that they are truly serving their communities. Can you identify some of the main barriers that you see that discourage high school students, current high school students, from taking dual enrollment courses and getting a jump start on their higher education?
There are a couple barriers I would cite, sir. First being who's going to pay for it? And it's not the student, but is it the K-12 district? Is it going to be the community college? Secondly, and maybe the biggest barrier sometimes is finding qualified faculty to teach the courses. Not that the K-12 faculty aren't qualified, and certainly the community college faculty would be qualified, but the SACS, Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, the accrediting arm that accredits your state and others in the South, requires that the faculty member of record teaching the course has to have a master's degree and 18 graduate credit hours in whatever subject they're teaching. And oftentimes, while a K-12 teacher might be very qualified in teaching a given course, they may not be qualified by SACS accreditation standards. And so those are a couple of the barriers. I would draw your attention to an article that Dan Domenech, who's head of AASA, the School Superintendents Association, and I co-wrote about 3 weeks ago about dual credit programs and what can be done. In fact, I'll get you a copy of that as soon as this meeting is over. We hold meetings twice a year on dual credit and what can be done. We bring together 12 superintendents, 12 college presidents for that specific purpose. We call it because we believe there are so many opportunities out there, and we've got a lot of low-hanging fruit that we're not taking advantage of. But thank you for your support, and we'll get you some information on that.
You hit the nail on the head with flexibility among the states for training teachers. That's so important. Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. Congresswoman Frankel.
Thank you. And to the panel, thank you again for your time and your service to our communities. I want to just follow up on my colleagues' questions on the digital divide. And really, what is the best way for Congress to help this situation, and just in terms of fundings? Is it through grants, loan programs at the community college? Are there any programs that you know of that are successful, and can you quantify the problem?
I'll take a shot at that, Representative Frankel, and I'll start by saying, and I think Congressman Klein touched on it, and the flexibility piece. I really applaud the Department of Ed and the flexibility that they have provided in their most recent guidance, if you will, for how the CARES funding could be spent, the Curricula funds, and the rescue funds. And if we had more opportunities to utilize some of the funding that we get in a way that colleges can provide laptops and other technology equipment to their students, it would go a long way towards addressing some of the digital issues that we have.
Just think, what would be the format? Are you thinking of a loan, a grant? If you had the ability to do that, how would you get the equipment to the students? What would be the format?
Great question, and a pretty complicated question for just a simple answer. Right now, the mechanism I think may be the best mechanism would be to utilize some of the monies we get for these in terms of stimulus dollars that we receive, being able to have more flexibility with those dollars as the department is awarded.
Chairman, I just got interrupted, but I meant what is the connection with the school and the student? In other words, do you see giving a computer to a student or lending a computer to a student?
Both, and most colleges receive some stimulus dollars over the last 6 or 8 months, and they in the past were prevented from utilizing those dollars for equipment. Most recently, we've been given some latitude of how we can expend those dollars. In the CARES Act initial funding, 50% of the dollars a college received had to go to students, but they were prevented from utilizing those dollars for the purposes of digital support. And most recently, under the new Secretary of Ed, Cardona, they have allowed us to use many and more of those dollars for this purpose.
If I could add, our college has a laptop lending program that we administer through our library. And then our foundation over the past year raised funding to distribute 650 laptops to students who needed them to deal with the pandemic. So, absent, a sort of a complete, sort of taking care of this, I think it's going to be a number of different mechanisms for funding coming together to support the needs of our students.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I yield back.
Thank you. I just might add on that point, because I think the digital divide is such an important issue, because it's not just at this moment in terms of an education. I think we're going to look at the jobs of the future being more targeted at digital. And what we don't want to do is exacerbate that digital divide now, so that those people who are already behind will get further behind. And I think we have to look at philanthropic organizations as well who are willing to help us out with this effort, but a number of ways. Let me just ask Congressman Harris for any closing remarks or comments that he would like to make, and then I will wrap it up, but you've all been wonderful. Congressman Harris.
No, thank you all very much, and thank you, Madam Chair, for calling the hearing. Look, the bottom line is that community colleges, I think, in the past, present, and especially into the future, are an incredibly important as we get into the 21st century economy, the 21st century learning environment, where they're the interface between what people need to know and people, meeting people where they are. So anything we can do, the digital divide is important. We have to make sure we know in rural areas, we're bringing broadband that the last mile, and that will open up incredible opportunities, especially in rural communities. So thank you all. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And I just want to just repeat, even not only with the testimony, but with the range and breadth of the answers that our witnesses have given this morning, it really is so striking to me again about the consistency of directive to all of us, the essential nature of community colleges, and the further investment that we need to make because of the direction that our country is going in at the moment. And if we want to build that architecture for the future with regard to education, that we need to really be looking at the investments in what is a kind of a core and a central component of that education. And I'm most appreciative of the recommendations that you all have made. I think it is helpful in guiding us as to where we need to go when we are moving to put the appropriations bill together. This is about high quality education and about equipping students with the skills that they need. One of I never got around to this question, but I would love to hear from folks on this. it just seems that somebody did talk about best practices, but there's so much out there, like the new collar a program that we're talking about P-TECH and some of these other areas. Would you all think that what we needed was some sort of a national clearinghouse to know what is out there? And I know people talked about it, a skills exchange with employment, I think, which is some central apparatus for that, but a national clearinghouse that then allows us to know what's happening in what state, and what are the requirements, where's the flexibility, all of that which has been talked about. And given the universe that you really work with, non-traditional students, adult learners, single parents, first-generation college students, part-time students, low-income students, a more diverse student population that is out there. It seems to me that there's a statistic: 70% of people in the United States do not have a 4-year a college education. And while it's wonderful to get one, and we should continue to promote that, it isn't the end of your life if you don't have one, or your economic well-being. And so we need to find the route to have people realize their dreams and their aspirations and their economic aspirations for themselves and their families. You face challenges, juggling academic programs that the students face, with difficulties in their lives, that whole range of supportive services that are critically necessary. And we do have federal programs, and this committee, most of these programs come through this committee, which is why I asked the question about where we try to focus our attention. And I appreciate your being so specific about that. And I believe that I can say to the committee on both sides of the aisle that we are committed to making strong investments in community colleges through the appropriations bills, because it all leads to how people can get a shot at that American dream. So I want to just say thank you very, very much, all of you, for your candor, your clarity, the great work that you are doing in making sure that people have the opportunities that they need in order to succeed. And it's all about, and what this committee is all about in appropriations, of giving people the opportunity for a better chance at a better life. Thank you all for doing that every single day, and for your willingness to work with us as we move forward through this appropriations process. And with that, I'm going to use a remote here to call the adjournment of the meeting. Thank you so much. I appreciate your help and your time, and all of our members. Great questions.